Civility has been at the center of recent public discourse on university campuses. Very recently, with the decision of the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign to fire Professor Stephen Salaita, we have listened to calls for civility as a way to limit expression and the content of expression. The argument of the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign is simply that Professor Stephen Salaita did not follow the normative ideals of civility. The question that I have raised in my earlier blog posts relate to the definition of civility. What really is civility? Particularly as it pertains to social media, how is civility defined? What are the norms around civility? And what are the governing structures that determine how these norms are going to be implemented? What is troubling in the Illinois case is the absolute lack of transparency on behalf of the university in articulating its normative ideals of civility, or in making sure that the processes that the university followed were made evident. In follow-up releases, what in fact becomes evident is that the call for civility was driven to a large extent by donors who expressed dissatisfaction and threatened to take away their funding from the university. Questions therefore are naturally raised about the economic power structures and economic incentives that utilize civility as a facade in order to suppress particular kinds of expression or particular kinds of oppositional narratives. Within the context of the recent tweets posted by Professor Salaita, it might even be argued that his tweets criticizing the violence perpetrated by the State of Israel in Gaza were the real issue with the Illinois administration and also with the Board of Trustees and potential donors. The university on its part cannot really respond objectively to this kind of criticism because it does not have available to itself norms and ideas of civility that it would have put to use in order to define what is acceptable or not acceptable speech within the confines of social media. You see, one of the things that the social media demonstrate to us is how difficult it is for us to actually come up with normative ideals of speech within social media. In fact, many of these normative ideals of speech within social media are continually evolving to apply traditional senses of communication or normative ideas of communication that we typically use in traditional media to your Facebook or to your Twitter post is completely misguided because it does not really engage with the nature of the medium, which is open, dynamic, and continually evolving. Within that sense, then, the notion of civility within social media, as the notion of civility within the context of traditional media and traditional channels of communication, are likely to emerge much more organically from within the communities through participation of community members in these processes of communication. To impose a particular set of normative ideals as the standards of civility defy the fundamental notion of social media and the ways in which communication happens to take place on the social media. Going back to the Salaita case then, the broader question that needs to be asked is the extent to which arguments about civility are utilized to serve the dominant structures of power. The extent to which arguments of civility are utilized in order to erase or background particular kinds of arguments. The extent to which arguments of civility are utilized in this particular context to actually silence any kind of critique of the State of Israel and its attacks on Gaza. If you look at the tweets of Professor Salaita, one of the things becomes quite apparent that these tweets do not even match the level of violence that we have witnessed in the images that we have seen on social media in what was going on in Gaza. Within that context, then, if we really have to ask about questions of civility, we need to ask broader questions such as how civil it is to perpetuate violence on a civilian population, how civil it is to use the weapon of war that silences opportunities of dialogue. the question of civility within university campuses is an important question, but to really discuss this question seriously, I think universities need to move beyond the circuits of power that traditionally constrain them, leading them to a series of opaque decisions that are not transparent to various stakeholders, but rather to creating open climates for engaging the kind of debate that I hope Professor Salaita wanted us to engage in with his tweets. Thank you.